Hi everyone, it's Ms.Phippard and I'm here to show you how to do our first project, the desktop nameplate. As you can see, this project makes a three-dimensional name. The requirements you have are you need a base, you need your name somewhere on it, and you need a symbol of your choice also somewhere on it, and it's all going to be three-dimensional so that we can print it out for the 3D printer. And if you look, if we go back to the home view, it will lay flat on one side for printing. Before we get started making this design, the first thing we're going to do is set up a couple defaults since this is our first one we're doing together as a class. Those defaults can be found under your preferences, which are on your name in the upper right hand corner. So if I click on my name, I see preferences, and there are two things I want you to change. One, the default modeling orientation, which is under the preferences controlling the user interface, and that should say Z up. So Z up. Z up is the orientation that the 3D printers use, so we want our default modeling orientation to be that way too, because it makes switching things from Fusion to the printer much more simple. Okay, so default modeling orientation, Z up. The other one is your default units for design. So over in the menu, find that, default units for design. And we want the default units for a new design to be in millimeters. So you'll see there's options for millimeters, centimeters, meters, inches, and feet. We want that to be millimeters, and that's so that whatever scale we're using for something, it comes out correct. It doesn't end up with, us trying to make something small and it turning out to be very huge, or vice versa. So click that to millimeters. For both of these, you will need to click Apply and then OK. And then for them to actually take effect, we need to open a new document. So I'm just going to close my nameplate up here, and it will open a brand new untitled document. You can do the same by closing whatever your untitled document is, and it will open a brand new untitled document with the new settings. And to check, Z should be up over here, which for me it is, and your document settings on the left, document settings, units, millimeters. All right, so for our nameplate and most of our first few modeling designs, we will start with a sketch. And to make a sketch, we go up here to Create Sketch. And if you'll notice, most of the menu icons, when you hold over them, you will see a little description of what they do. In this case, Create Sketch lets you draw out or sketch a two-dimensional version of what you're going to make. So if you click on that, it gives you the options of the different places you could put your sketch. We want to place our sketch on a flat plane, a surface. In this case, we want to place it on essentially the floor of our environment here. So if you look, if you think of the planes as like, here's a wall, here's another wall, here's the floor, that is where we want it. Another way of making sure you're selecting the right plane is you could go to the view cube here and click on top, and then we're looking straight down at the floor, and that's the one we want to pick. Okay, so we are now looking at the flat plane as if we're looking straight down on our nameplate from above. Our nameplate consists of three parts: the rectangular base, our name, and our symbol. For the rectangular base, you simply need to draw a rectangle, and there's a tool for that. It's called the two-point rectangle. You click on it, and for Fusion, you don't click and hold, you just click and release. So in this case, it says place first corner, so we click. and then go somewhere else and place another corner, and we have a rectangle. I'm going to actually undo this, though, because I want our rectangle to have dimensions that I can easily change. Dimensions are measurements. So I'm going to click the rectangle. I'm going to place my first corner, but then I'm not going to click for my second corner yet. So I want you to notice I now have two numbers, one along a side and one along the top, that give me the size or dimension of those measurements. And I can type in what I want those to be. And I'm going to start with 15 for that side. And then I'm going to click Tab on my keyboard. I'm going to start with 150 for that side. And then I'm going to click Enter. And now my rectangle is there, and it looks just like it did before, but it has these dimensions. Anytime I want to change the size of my rectangle now, I can just double click on a number. And now I can type in a new number, and my rectangle will change. I think I'm going to put that back to 150 though. Okay. This makes it a lot easier to control your sketch if you have dimensions. I'm going to move this dimension down out of my way. Okay. So it's always good to put dimensions into your sketches. The second part, we have our rectangle. The second part was our text. You get to your text through the Create menu, Create, and then Text next to this A. You can click anywhere to place your text for right now. And the menu that pops up, you see the first thing is to type in your text. In this case, your text is your name. And I'm going to actually type my name in capitals because I don't want my letters to hang down. Okay. After you type your name, it asks you for what height you want your name to be. And I want my name to be taller than it is right now. I'm going to change it to 20. Nice and large. You'll want to mess with how tall your name is based on how big you want your nameplate to be and also how long your name is. If your name's really short, you can make it taller because it doesn't take up as much room. Okay. We don't need to change the angle. I'm going to make it bold to make the letters a little thicker. And then you can change your font. A caution, some of the fancier fonts, for example this one, won't actually render well in Fusion. Fusion won't be able to do them. Okay, so you might want to choose a less fancy font. This one might not even work, but I'm going to try it. No, I'm not. For the tutorial, I'm going to stay simple. Okay, so choose your font, and then when you're done, say OK. And then you can click on your name and move it until it overlaps just a tiny bit with your rectangle, like that. So every single letter needs to overlap a little bit with your rectangle. That will allow it to join together easily. The last piece is your icon. The icons for this are a type of file called SVG. You will need to first go onto the internet and find an SVG file for what you want. So if you want a picture of a smiley face, you need a smiley face SVG file. I wanted a robot arm, so I went on the internet and I found an SVG file, meaning the file ended in .svg. And then I downloaded it. And I find it by clicking Insert, Insert SVG, finding it in the folder I've put it on my computer, and now it's here. Okay. When the SVGs come in, sometimes they're really small, sometimes they're really big. You can change that with scale. Right now my scale is at 1, which is 100%. This is way too small, so I'm going to do that like a 3 or a 4. You might need to shrink yours, so you might need to change it to a 0.5, so like a half size. It kind of depends on what size your SVG file was. You can also flip it, which I'm going to do. Okay, you do a vertical flip, but that would be weird in this case. But you put your SVG file in, and then move it where you want it. Make sure to move it where you want it before you click OK. They are really hard to move afterward. Okay, same thing with your sizing. Once you have it exactly how you like, click OK. SVG files, when they come in, are green on the edges. Green on the edges means that they are not movable. So see, I can't do anything to it. Blue on the edges are things that you can change. Tan on the inside means the shape is closed, which is what we want. Now, something that I don't want right now is that this is unconnected. So this circle is going to be floating and this arm is going to be floating. So I'm going to right click and click Fix Unfix to make this line blue and this line blue so that I can move these now so that I can then connect them. I'm going to do the same thing here. Fix Unfix. So right click, Fix Unfix. Now I can move it and that will allow me to connect so I don't end up with any weird gaps in my file. Finally, I'm going to clean up my file a bit, okay, using the Trim tool. Under Modify, Trim, it looks like scissors. I don't want these extra little bits of pieces. So if I click on these little files, it shows in red what it's about to cut out. And I can get rid of those little bits. I'm also going to get rid of this one. Okay, so that's a lot cleaner. If I want to add detail, I can do that with lines. You can really go as creative as you want. So if I wanted to, I could stop here. I'm going to add a line here, though. I'm going to add a line here to just add some detail to my arm. I could even add like joints here if I wanted to make even more detail. But I'm going to stop right here for now for this kind of basic version. Okay. When I'm completely done, I have everything where I want it. I have my basic drawing of what I'm going to make three-dimensional. I then click Finish Sketch. And now I'm back in my initial view. My sketch is here, but I can't see all my measurements and anything anymore. I now need to make it 3D because if you look, if I move around on my view cube, it's flat. Nothing's there, okay? So now I'm going to use a tool called Extrude. Extrude is found here in the Create menu. Extrude, if you look, adds depth. Okay? It makes it three-dimensional. You can also find Extrude by clicking E on your keyboard. Okay, so I just clicked E, but you'll see it highlights up here too. It's this one. It's also in the Create menu, Extrude. You can also get to it by clicking on something and right-clicking, Extrude. Okay, so choose Extrude. You then can select the things that you want to make 3D. If you want to make everything the same height, you can select everything. So I could go through and select everything. However, that would make it kind of boring. Right now, if I select everything and I extrude it, you'll see I have a three-dimensional shape. Okay, but you see how it's totally flat on the top, but I've lost all my detail. So instead, I'm going to select a few pieces at a time and choose a height. And then I'm going to select a different piece and choose a different height. So my first piece is my base. I'm going to choose my base, and I'm going to make my base 12 millimeters thick. And then I'm going to click OK. And see, I only have my base. My sketch disappeared. Fusion thinks when you use a sketch once that you're done with it. But you can find it again over here under Sketches. And you can click the eye next to it to make it show up again. Okay, so I'm going to click E for extrude. Now I'm going to click my name and the base of my arm and a couple other pieces of my arm, maybe those. And I'm going to make those all 10 millimeters. And it automatically says, oh, you want to cut these out of your base, but I don't. I don't want to cut them out. I want to join them to my base. So I click join and I click OK, and you'll see now I have those. And notice they're a different height than my base. Okay. And now I click E again. I'm going to select everything I have left. I'm missing something. Why can't I select that? There we go. Okay. And it's set to join. And we'll give those 9 millimeters and say join. Okay. And then I'm going to turn the sketch off again. Okay. And so notice now that with those different heights, we end up with some actual visual interest there instead of just this big flat plane. Okay. So something I notice when I look at this is that this base rectangle is really big, and it doesn't need to be this big. But I've done all this stuff, and now I don't want to have to redo it all. The great thing though is that in Fusion, if you go back to your sketch, you can change your sketch and it will change everything for you. Down at the bottom of your screen is your timeline. So in my timeline down here, I can find my sketch. I can right click on my sketch and I find where it says Edit Sketch. And then right here, my dimension from before, I had 15 millimeters. Now I'm going to say, no, I want that to be, let's say 8 millimeters. That looks a lot better. And then I'm going to click Finish Sketch. And you'll see it updated the whole thing. All my work is still there, and that base is much smaller. Okay. One final thing we're going to do is we're going to round off these corners a bit with a tool. So it's under Tools called Modify Chamfer. And chamfer makes the edges kind of cut a little bit. You could also use this tool over here, Fillet, that rounds them, depending on what you like. Okay, so it says first select your edges. So I'm going to select all of these edges, and I might turn it a little bit so I can see. Maybe I'll select that edge and that edge also, and turn it a little bit so I can see over here and select that edge and that edge. Okay, and I'm going to give them all a chamfer of 3 if it'll let me. It says that's too big. Try 2. Try 1. Okay, and so you can see that kind of gave the edges a nice done look, a finished look. Okay, at this point you would be done. This is a finished product. It would meet all the requirements. If you wanted to add more details in little ways, you could. For example, I think that it'd be fun to add more text. So I have my name, but maybe I want something cool here. The cool thing about sketches is you can put them on any flat or planar surface. So this is a planar surface, so I can put a sketch here. So I'm going to click Create Sketch. And I'm going to put more text. I'm going to click and I'm going to write, let's say 5 millimeters, not big. We'll write North Middle School Robotics. And you know, sometimes Fusion's weird. For some reason it did that upside down. So we'll flip it 180 degrees. Now it's right side up. And then we'll move it to where we want it. And we'll make it not have a weird capital I in it. There we go. So North Middle School Robotics. Make it italic. And say OK. And finish sketch. And unlike the first sketch we did, which if I flip that on, you'll see is down on the bottom, this sketch is up here on top of our object. So now when I click extrude for that, I can pull it down. Whoops. Need to make sure I've selected the text. I can pull it down and you'll see it's cutting in. And it's going to actually like leave a hole there in the shape of our text instead of pushing out. So that's what cut does. Okay. So I think that's pretty cool and we're fairly done. We can then change color here. This won't make a difference in your final print, but it makes it look better on your screen. So I can modify the appearance and I can make it yellow or red. There we go. Right. And there we have it. There is your design. And since Fusion has changed a little bit, I don't see my final option, which is how we 3D print. So let me see one quick. Manufacture. Okay. So we'll go over those instructions in class. But your final thing is you need to make sure to save. Give it a good name. Don't name it untitled. Name it what it actually is. Even name it your name and then what it actually is so that when you turn it in, I can figure out who it belongs to. Click Save. Admire your work a little bit. Congratulations, you have just completed your first project.